Can we do two things? Can you define people what ROAS really is as their understanding metric like this? And then can you talk about maybe what you guys do different to be able to achieve that where so many other folks can't?
Sure. Okay, ROAS. ROAS is a very commonly used metric. Some people call it ROAS, some people call it ROAS. It stands for, it's an acronym for return on ad spend. And if you're familiar with ROI, return on investment, it's essentially the same thing. But ROI is more complex because it could account for overhead, it could account for other investments. Whereas ROAS is a return metric, it's a profitability metric specifically for ad spend. So it's your total conversion value divided by your cost of advertising. That's it. Simple. Gives you ROAS. So if you generated $10 in sales, right? So it's not necessarily a measure of profitability, although it can be. I'll get to that in a second. But let's say you did $10 of gross sales and you spend $5 in advertising. You'd have what we call a 2x ROAS. 10 divided by 5 is 2, right? 2x ROAS, a 200% ROAS. Now, that's not objectively good or bad, right? It depends on what your margins are on those $10 of sales. So if you're running at a 10% margin and you've earned $1 in profit and you spend $5 to generate that $1 in profit, you're in trouble, right? That's a losing proposition. So what we'll do oftentimes with clients is we'll determine break-even thresholds of ROAS. So based on your margins, based on your cost of goods sold, based on your shipping, based on your returns, and then you add some complexities based on your lifetime value. Let's say you're selling a subscription product. Let's say you're an e-commerce company and customers come back or they buy accessories. Well, how do you measure that? How do you know? Well, it's not so easy. It's not so simple to understand lifetime value because most of your customers haven't lived out their life by you yet. If you're Starbucks and you have like 50 years of and an extraordinary amount of data, you could probably get a decently good prediction of lifetime value when one person walks into this location and buys a grande frappuccino. You might have a sense of lifetime value, but most businesses, it's very hard. So you model it out. What if on average, every one customer refers 0.2 people to your website or brand by word of mouth? Well, how do you incorporate that into your formula and how do you get to that 0.2 number? So there's all different ways of looking at data and adding this complexity, but then we'll basically get a sense of what is your margin. When you earn $10 of sales, how much money can we expect for you to pocket, the business to pocket at the end of the day? Is it 11, 20, 100, or maybe it's 90 cents? And once we understand margin, then we could say, what is your break-even ROAS? Do you need a 10x return for every dollar spent? Do you need a 1-to-1 return? Or maybe you need a 0.5 return. Maybe you can lose money on the first sale. Maybe you could spend $15 to get those $10 in sales because we know within the next 6 months or within the next 3 months, we are statistically confident that you'll have earned that back and have turned a profit on acquiring that customer. Okay, so now this leads me into the second question. Where I think most clients and businesses fail spectacularly in performance marketing, and this is across the spectrum of spend, whether you're spending $20 a day or $200,000 a day on online advertising, is being too dogmatic about linear short-term profitability. I'm always, or I've had this conversation with clients hundreds of times where they say, we let's go back to our example. We make $10, right? Our margins, let's just call it, our margins are 50%. We have to have a minimum 2 times return every day, right? Otherwise we're not profitable. And then I'll say, look, I see your data. We've analyzed it. You get an average of 4 additional purchases over the course of the year. They're like, oh yeah, but no, it's not profitable if we don't, no, you can't spend more than $5 to get $10 in sales because our margin's 50%. I say, yeah, your margin's 50%, but it's not really 50% on the customer. It's 50% on their first purchase. It's not 50% on the customer. So you're acquiring a customer. We know, and I could tell them the p-value is less than 0.05%. We know they're going to buy 3 more times. And you're not going to have to pay again to get them to buy those next 3 times. So your all-in cost of acquiring the customer was $5. Yeah, today they checked out and they generated $10 in sales. And today you broke even. Or your all-in cost was $10 and you lost $5 on acquiring this customer today. But if we project out over the next 3 to 6 months, you're going to have earned $100 in sales and $95 in profit. And they say, no, like, don't look at it that way. Okay, fine, fair enough. You're a business owner. You're entitled to look at ROAS however you'd like to. But what's the real problem? Why do they fail? Because their competitors are not looking at it this way. There might be a handful of brands who really are, let's say, full tilt committed to generating what I call a linear profit, which is, let's say, a 1 to 5 day window where you want to see your campaigns generating that 2x return or that 3x return or that 10x return if your margins are 10%. But I guarantee you there's at least 10 more sophisticated, more mature businesses that are very happy. They're very happy to look at a more mature lifetime value of a customer. And why is that important? It's important because when they go and bid on Google and they bid on Facebook and they bid on Instagram and TikTok and Spotify and podcasts and programmatic display and connected TV and digital out of home, which is all of these markets are basically prescribed by an auction-like environment. There's very little left where I pick up the phone, I call a sales rep at the New York Times, and I go into a negotiation with them about taking over their homepage for a month. It's like, it doesn't really happen anymore. At least in the world that I live in, it's almost all auction centric. The auctions are all different. They all function a little bit differently. Do we charge by CPMs? What dimensions do we include in the auction? But competitors willing to pay more for that customer. The reason they're willing to pay more is because they're willing to take, they're willing to pay a higher acquisition cost today in exchange for longer term profit. Whereas you, i.e. the client that's going to fail, is like, no, this is unsuccessful if we can't turn a profit on a week over week basis. They're like, okay, well, your click costs will not come down because there's 20 other bigger, more mature competitors that want that customer. They're telling Google what they're willing to pay for that customer, and their math is not, it's not like greedy, rich capitalists just throwing money. It's no, they're saying like, we'll pay more because we also have the same we're not necessarily a better business with a better product. We're just happy to earn the profit over a 6-month horizon. So we'll pay more today and we'll knock you out of the auction.